He introduced me as his driver at the company party. Why did he publicly degrade me like that, in front of so many strangers? Driver. How could I be his girlfriend, someone I trusted and loved, if he could treat me like that? My name is Emma. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a marketing professional at a big company in the city. People often describe me as confident, someone who always sticks to her views and finds clever and smart ways to solve problems at work. However, I think when it comes to love, I haven't been as lucky as I am in my career. The story I'm about to tell you is a journey from absolute happiness to deep wounds that only time could heal. Mark and I met 2 years ago at a party thrown by some friends. He wasn't like the other men I'd met before. He had a unique charm, both captivating and easygoing. Mark was a successful man working in IT, and he seemed to have everything I had ever dreamed of. We started talking naturally, sharing common interests like indie films, music, and exploring the city together. He wasn't overly talkative, but every time he smiled, I felt like the whole world was blooming. In the beginning, everything was wonderful. The weekend dates became the highlight of my week. We went to movies, strolled around the city, enjoyed delicious meals, and shared stories about life, work, and dreams. He always made me feel special, and I began to think I had found someone I could be with long-term. There were evenings when we sat in silence, watching the world outside, listening to music, and it felt like we didn't need to say much, just being with each other was enough. I loved Mark in a way I had never loved anyone before. I loved his calm and maturity. I loved the way he took care of me when I was tired, and how he always found the best advice for me when I was facing difficulties. I thought I had found a life partner, someone with whom I could share everything in this life. But little did I know, strange signs started appearing gradually. I'm not usually one to notice the small things, but one day I noticed something odd. Even though we had been dating for almost a year, I had never been introduced to Mark's friends or colleagues. He always said that he was too busy with work and didn't have time for social gatherings, and I, naively, believed those excuses. I convinced myself that maybe he was just very focused on his work and didn't want to mix work with his personal life. Then one day, I started feeling uncomfortable with some of his remarks. Mark often made fun of the car I drove, saying it was too old and didn't suit someone like me. He also made jokes about my clothes, sometimes with sharp comments. I would laugh it off, thinking that this was just his way of showing concern, but one day, I felt really uncomfortable when he said that I worked like a civil servant and couldn't understand the stress he faced at work. I tried to overlook those things because I loved him, but those words gradually made me feel like I wasn't good enough, not worthy of him. And then, I couldn't help but notice something else. Mark had never invited me to any company events, and I had never met his colleagues. I started asking him why, but he would just smile and say that those were boring gatherings, and I wouldn't enjoy them anyway. Despite many signs showing that this relationship might not go anywhere, I didn't want to face the truth. I loved him, and I wanted to believe that everything would be fine. But sometimes, the truth is something we don't want to see. So, I kept living in his explanations and my own excuses until everything became truly irreparable. What started as sweet and romantic moments soon turned into a series of realizations. My true feelings about myself, about my worth, were slowly being lost in this relationship. But at that time, I still tried to hold on because I thought that love was enough. When I look back, the signs of disrespect in my relationship with Mark weren't something that appeared suddenly. They came slowly, piece by piece, like a gentle wave hitting the shore, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. I was too blind, and sometimes we love someone so much that we don't want to see the truth. In the beginning, the days with him were full of joy and romance. Mark could be the ideal companion on short trips or quiet nights together. But gradually, I began to notice the little things that I had never paid attention to before. The comments I had thought were jokes, but in fact, had a touch of discomfort. At first, I thought they were harmless jabs because Mark often teased me about the dresses I picked out, the shoes I wore, or even how I applied makeup. He would say that I didn't need to care too much about my appearance because he loved me just as I am. However, gradually, I realized that those jabs weren't just playful anymore. Sometimes, he would say that I was too old or didn't suit overly feminine dresses. Those words weren't just a lack of respect for my appearance, but also a subtle hint at my worth in his eyes. One time, when we went to a party he organized for his friends, I was really excited. I had picked out a red dress, something I felt confident and beautiful in. But when I walked into the room and saw him chatting with a group of people, I overheard a remark from him. "Oh, you're wearing that again. You look like an aunt going to a wedding." At that moment, I just smiled awkwardly, but a bitter feeling spread through me. Why couldn't he appreciate the effort I put into looking nice for him? Why did he see me as someone with no value in his eyes? But it wasn't just about appearance. The disrespect also came from actions I started noticing. I wondered why, after almost a year, I had never been introduced to any of Mark's friends, especially his colleagues. He always said they were busy, didn't like meeting strangers, and didn't have time. But one day, I realized he never actually invited me to those gatherings. Whenever he organized a company event or had dinner with colleagues, I always heard excuses like, "You won't like it, it's too boring," or "It's just a company party, I don't want you to feel lonely among people you don't know." And once again, I accepted it quietly, thinking he cared about my feelings. I began to feel like I was a peripheral part of his life. He always had interesting stories about business trips, parties he attended, but whenever I asked about his work, he would avoid it or give short answers. I tried many times to open up and share my worries about my work, but Mark never really listened. He would just smile, pat my shoulder, and say, "Your job isn't that complicated, you just don't know how to organize it." Those words didn't just make me feel unintelligent, they also made me feel small and useless in this relationship. In the months that followed, I realized that Mark's jokes didn't just stop at comments about my appearance or my work. Once, when we were having dinner at home, he said something that I still remember clearly. "Do you see? The girls in my company are all beautiful and smart, not like you." Those words not only struck my self-esteem but also felt like a slap in the face, making me realize that, to Mark, I was nothing more than a decoration in his life. I wanted to resist, to tell him that I didn't need his criticism or belittling remarks. But then, a strange and heavy feeling started to settle in. I couldn't argue back, because I loved him. I had always tried to show him how good I was, to prove that I was worthy of him. But now, there was nothing I could do but swallow those words deep inside. Little by little, these small signs began to fill the space between us. I wondered whether I was being too sensitive or if he really didn't respect me. But no matter the reason, those feelings were undeniable. I had loved Mark deeply, and perhaps because I loved him so much, I had ignored many things that I shouldn't have overlooked. The first signs of disrespect, hurtful words, actions that made me feel like an outsider, slowly started to crack our relationship without me realizing it. I knew I had to face the truth, but in a moment of weakness, I chose to remain silent and convince myself that maybe I misunderstood, and everything will be fine. But later, I understood that, in any relationship when respect is gone, all that's left are wounds that can never heal. One autumn morning, Mark told me that his company was organizing a big client dinner on the weekend, and he wanted me to come with him. I was nervous but also proud. It was the first opportunity for me to meet some of the important people in his work life, to get a glimpse of his world from a different perspective. Mark had a stable career in tech, and I had always thought that if I could attend such an event, I would understand him better, maybe build a closer relationship with him. The day arrived, and I spent a lot of time preparing. I wore a simple but elegant black dress, light makeup, and meticulously styled hair. I felt confident because it was the first time I would meet the people from his professional world. Mark said I would meet many important people, from company clients to high-ranking colleagues. I told myself that this would be a great opportunity to make a good first impression. When I arrived to pick up Mark, he was ready, and we went to the hotel where the dinner was held. Though I tried to keep calm, a sense of tension still crept over me. Mark noticed my nervousness and just smiled, telling me not to worry too much, that everything would be fine. I tried to believe him. However, as soon as we entered the hotel, I sensed that something was wrong. Mark seemed to not want to walk with me. He moved quickly, leaving me behind while I tried to catch up. The guests around us were looking at me, and I felt their eyes like a test. We passed through the large hall, and I noticed that Mark had already moved toward his group, without a word to me. I tried to catch up, but he didn't turn around, and there was no gesture to indicate that I should follow him. When I got closer to Mark's group, he saw me but didn't give me any kind of welcome. He just nodded curtly, then continued talking to them. I stood there on the sidelines, feeling like a stranger, not his girlfriend but an invisible person who didn't belong in this space. I stood there, observing, and a sense of emptiness engulfed me. How could I be a part of his world if he treated me like this? Then, suddenly, a woman from the group looked at me and asked, "Who are you?" I was about to introduce myself as Mark's girlfriend, but as soon as I opened my mouth, Mark cut me off. He turned to the woman and said, "This is Emma, my driver." That sentence hit me like a lightning bolt. The whole room fell silent, and I could feel the gazes of those around us, all looking at me in confusion. "Driver?" the woman asked again, her eyes wide open, clearly shocked. Mark just smiled, perhaps thinking no one would understand the situation. "Yeah, she drove me here," he said, his voice distant, as though it were just an insignificant detail. I felt like I had been slapped in the face. The whole dinner turned into a play I didn't want to be a part of. I felt humiliated. Why did he do that? Why did he openly degrade me like that, in front of all these strangers? "Driver!" How could I be his girlfriend, someone I trusted and loved, if he saw me like this? I gently pulled him aside from the crowd, trying to stay calm, but inside I was filled with anger. "Why the driver?" I asked, my voice filled with frustration. Mark didn't look at me, just shook his head like I was overreacting. "You don't understand," he said. "His company has important people. I couldn't make them feel awkward. You don't belong in this world, and you don't understand the importance of keeping up appearances." I went silent, the anger rising in my chest. I couldn't believe he could see me as something so insignificant. I had sacrificed, done everything I could to support him, to prove that I was worthy, but now I was just a driver, nothing more. Everything broke down right there. The love I had kept in my heart now turned to ashes. I couldn't stand there any longer. I softly told Mark I needed to go outside for a bit to breathe. He didn't object, just said, "You take care of yourself." That sentence felt like nothing, and I felt like I was being pushed out of his life. When I stepped outside the hall, I felt the weight in my heart. I didn't understand why someone I loved so much could treat me like this. The pain spread through me, inescapable. I stood there, watching the cars pass by, wondering if I was being blind, if I could continue loving someone who didn't respect me like this. The answer, though late, was clear. No, I couldn't. But why did it take me this long to realize it? Since that night, I couldn't shake off the humiliation, the pain, and the disappointment. Mark's words, "This is Emma, my driver," kept echoing in my head every time I closed my eyes. That wasn't just a small insult. It was a denial of everything I had done for this relationship. I had sacrificed so much to be with him, trusted him, loved him, and now I was nothing but a driver. How could I have let this happen? The next day, Mark kept calling. His messages were full of apologies, but I didn't want to hear them. Empty words couldn't erase the pain inside me. "I'm sorry you misunderstood," he said over the phone. "I didn't mean to hurt you." But how could I believe him again? If he truly cared about me, why would he do that? He didn't just embarrass me in front of strangers. He made me feel worthless in his eyes. Though torn, I stayed silent. I didn't respond to his messages or answer his calls. A part of me wanted to believe he would change, but another part couldn't endure this deceit anymore. I knew if I stayed in this relationship, I would only get hurt more. He didn't deserve me. I deserve a man who would love and respect me, not someone who would treat me as an insignificant object in his life. A week passed, and Mark kept contacting me. He started sending long text messages, full of apologies and promises to change. He said that what happened that night wasn't worth me overthinking, just a careless comment, but he didn't know that those words felt like a sharp knife piercing my heart. How could he see that as something minor? How could he degrade me like that, and then ask for my forgiveness? I felt torn, but I knew I couldn't go back. I had to end this relationship, no matter how hard it was. I called him, my voice trembling but firm. We need to talk. I arranged to meet him at a cafe near my place. When Mark arrived, I could see the worry in his eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for him anymore. I felt tired, not just because of what happened, but because I had allowed myself to endure too much pain. I've thought about this a lot, and I can't go on like this anymore. I began, my voice calm but certain. I can't stay in a relationship with someone who doesn't respect me, who doesn't see me as someone important in his life. He looked at me, shock written all over his face, as if he couldn't believe I was saying this. But I knew this was the only thing I could do for myself. No more requests, no more hopes. I had tried for so long to hold on, but now I couldn't keep living in this lie. Mark tried to say something, but I just shook my head. There's nothing to say, Mark. We're done here, I said, trying to stay calm, though my heart was heavy. He couldn't understand how I felt. He might have loved me in some vague way, but he couldn't see what I needed. He couldn't see the pain he caused me. He didn't understand that I had been exhausted by living in the shadow of disrespect. When I stood up, Mark sat there, silent. I didn't look back at him, even though there were still scars in my heart. It felt like I had finally let go of a part of my past, a part of me I had once loved and trusted. But I knew this was the best decision I could make for myself. Love can't be a reason to accept pain. I needed to love myself first. As I walked out of the cafe, I didn't look back. The conflicting emotions were still there, but I knew I had done the right thing. I could move on with my life, not with the pain of betrayal, but with hope for the future I truly deserved. After making the final decision to end things with Mark, I thought everything would end quickly and I'd feel free. But the truth wasn't what I expected. Although I decided not to contact him, I couldn't avoid the conflicting feelings inside me. A part of me still cared for him, and another part felt like I had done the right thing. All those mixed emotions spun around me like a whirlwind, but I knew I couldn't go back. The next day, Mark texted me, then called nonstop. Every time the phone rang, my heart raced. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I didn't answer. I wanted him to understand that my decision was final, that I couldn't keep enduring the lies and pain. But then, one late evening, I received a long message from him, full of apologies. He said he had been wrong, and that he couldn't imagine how much pain losing me would cause him. My heart wavered. How could I not feel anything when he called my name with regret in every word? How could I not feel the sorrow in his voice when he admitted that he had hurt me? I really wanted to believe that his apologies were genuine, that he would change. But when I looked back at everything that had happened, I knew that words alone couldn't change the truth. This wasn't the first time he had disappointed me, and I couldn't keep living in the hope that someone could change just because of words. The next day, Mark came to my house. He knocked on the door, and when I opened it, I saw him standing there, his face scrunched in discomfort, his eyes full of sorrow. He didn't say anything right away, just stood there as if not knowing where to start. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice gentle, but with a sadness that I couldn't ignore. "I was wrong. I don't know why I treated you like that. I don't understand how I could hurt you." I looked at him, unable to hide the complexity of my feelings. His words made me remember the sweet moments we had shared. But then, the hurt flooded back, and I couldn't escape it. "Mark, I loved you so much," I said, my voice starting to break. "I did everything for you. I trusted you, but you treated me like this, like I had no value." I looked him straight in the eyes, not wanting to hide my feelings. "You can't just apologize and expect me to come back. It's not that simple." Mark looked at me with a pained expression, as if he didn't know how to fix what he had done. "You're right," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I truly love you. I know I was wrong, and I regret it so much. I don't know what to do to make you trust me again." I could feel the sincerity in his words, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't overlook everything that had happened. It was a betrayal I couldn't forget. This relationship had left too many wounds, and no matter how sorry he was, those wounds couldn't easily heal. "You love me, but you've hurt me too much," I continued, tears rolling down my cheeks. "I can't keep doing this. I need to learn how to love myself, and to do that I need to walk away." Mark bowed his head, his eyes full of regret. "I'll do anything to make you forgive me, to have you back," he said, but I just shook my head. "Not right now," I replied, my voice soft but determined. "I need time to heal, to forget the wounds you've caused me. I can't go back to someone who doesn't respect me like that." Mark stayed silent for a while, as if trying to understand what I was saying. I knew he was heartbroken, and maybe he truly regretted what he had done. But I also knew that no matter how sorry he was, he couldn't undo the pain he had caused. Those apologies were just a small part of the scars I had to bear. When I stood up to leave, Mark sat there, silent. I didn't look back at him, even though my heart was still heavy with the wounds. It felt like I had finally let go of a part of my past, a part of me I had once loved and trusted. But I knew that this was the best decision I could make for myself. Love shouldn't be an excuse to endure suffering. I had to love myself first. As I walked out of the cafe, I didn't look back. The mixed emotions were still there, but I knew I had done the right thing. I could continue my life, not with the pain of betrayal, but with hope for a future that I truly deserved.